Red Tree Harlowe using the action skill Chroma Accelerator is one of the strongest builds I've used in any Borderlands game, while also being addictingly fun to play, and is what I believe to be by far and away the best leveling and endgame build for Harlowe. One of the best parts about the build is that you can be blasting like absolutely insane damage starting at just level 5, and as you level up, it'll only continue to get better. It also happens to be Harlowe's best endgame build, like I was saying, where eventually you get to just spam your action skill back to back to back, nuking the entire screen, while doing unbelievably high gun damage due to neutron capture, which is going to turn a percentage of your action skill damage into gun damage, which is the crux of the build. Thanks to our Chroma Accelerator being a massive nuke and just doing crazy damage, this allows us to use any fast firing weapon to pretty much instantly melt all sorts of enemies, like you can see here. And the gun that I'm using in this clip is a level 13 weapon while I'm in my 40s. Cannot stress enough how fun this build is, and it gets really crazy later into the game. Early levels, Chroma Accelerator will have a bit of a long cooldown, but we can easily solve that with some gear, which I'll go over in the video, but that is going to make it even that much more important to know which guns to use while your skill is on cooldown, and it's going to make a massive difference, especially on Harlowe. So make sure to stick around until the gearing section of the video. Let's get into it. If you find the video helpful, a like would be greatly appreciated, and if you're interested, the entirety of the build will be posted over on Mobalytics with some pretty important notes, but namely the skill point order, so you can just easily reference this on another monitor if you'd like. Also have an endgame guide posted there shortly. When it comes to the crux of the build, like I mentioned, it's effectively Chroma Accelerator. If you haven't seen this before, this thing is just awesome, and it is the core functionality of our build. Basically, you fire off this little ball that is kind of like a little nuke when you actually detonate it. By default, it's just going to like slowly travel, and it's going to deal cryo damage as it is traveling, so it'll often freeze enemies. And then whenever you decide to secondarily press it again, it will then cause a additional explosion that is going to do radiation damage, which is the detonation damage, and that is the majority of the damage that it does. So just to demonstrate it here, I'll shoot it, and you can see that it like slowly travels. It actually travels fairly fast, and then if I press the button again, it'll detonate, and then you can see that the radius of the detonation is actually quite large. And while you're leveling, that will basically one-shot anything that is in it other than like, you know, a really tanky enemy, like a badass or something, or a boss. It just feels crazy strong while leveling to have an action skill that like actually just blows stuff up. And then you pair that with neutron capture, which you get at level 5, which is pretty crazy. And this is basically going to convert any damage that the actual detonation little nuke did into additional gun damage for you, and it counts as bonus radiation damage, so it is damage actually on top of your gun. Because of this, any instance of damage you do with your gun is going to proc this bonus damage, which means the best way to take advantage of it is with a high rate of fire weapon. I'll go in depth with this later on, but I've been using a level 13 weapon, a gun I found at level 13, because it has crazy fire rate and it has an extra barrel on it, meaning it's shooting 2 bullets at a time. So it effectively has a 24 RPM, or 24 rounds per second rather. So I'm getting 24 instances of the neutron capture damage every second, which is crazy. And the damage conversion here is just ridiculous because your neutron capture can do so much damage, and any buffs that you get, which we're going to have a lot in the skill tree, is going to make it do even more damage, and then that's going to additionally apply to the bonus radiation damage. So you're effectively double dipping a lot of the damage here, and that's why it gets pretty insane. How you want to spend your skill points, there's a little bit of variance, but I'll go over what I think is the best way to do it. First off, we're going to go 5 into Cyclotron here so that your fire rate just feels better. This is particularly good when paired with neutron capture, obviously, and it'll just make your guns feel better in general. We're going to go into Elementary. This is just straight up 20% elemental damage for you, and if you happen to be using any Malawan weapon or anything with a decent status effect, you effectively get double the value out of this, but because it is LE damage, it'll also apply to the Chroma Accelerator. And then next we're going to go into Enrich, giving us a 21% increase to our Chroma Accelerator and our neutron capture. And this is where you get a lot of radiation damage scaling. So if you have a radiation weapon, now you have an additional 20% damage and then another 20%. And then when you're actually shooting, you know, then it starts to get out of hand. These next 2 points are optional. We effectively just need to spend 2 to get down to the middle portion of the tree. I'm going to put 2 into test subjects just so we have a little bit of additional cooldown for our Chroma Accelerator. One thing I want to mention is that a lot of people will spec heavily into action skill cooldown rate early into the levels, so that then obviously you have your Chroma Accelerator active more often, so then you have neutron capture more. The problem with this is that if you put a whole bunch of points into cooldown and then you don't have points into damage, when you pop your actual Chrome Accelerator, your damage will just be a little bit low because you're not scaling your damage generically, and then your gun damage is going to feel extremely weak. And these cooldown points aren't going to be massively impactful. This is 5 points for 35% cooldown reduction, which would only shave off about like 5 to 6 seconds of your Chroma Accelerator. So you could totally do that, but I think it is more value to go into something like Poison Sun, which is just going to give you a ton of additional radiation damage. This is going to give you a total of 30% radiation damage, and then if you happen to be using a radiation weapon, 60% of radiation chance. If you get a good radiation weapon paired with this, it gets pretty insane. Next, we are going to max out Chain Reactor, which simply just gives us bonus radiation damage to entangled enemies. We don't entangle like a crazy amount, but this is basically just going to make our Chrome Accelerator do even more damage. And then we're going to go into Fissile Launcher. Alternatively, you could go into Glow Up, which will help you a little bit on bosses, but it's only a 10% chance if you were to put 2 points into it. You could also do an entire 5 points into this if you just wanted a little bit more boss damage, but ultimately I think this will be more consistent for you. Now that we're further down into the tree, we can grab our Capstone Demon Core. As your unstable energy packet travels, it's going to shoot a radiation dart at enemies, and then whenever you entangle an enemy while the skill is active, you automatically irradiate that enemy. This is going to add a ridiculous amount of damage to your Chroma Accelerator. It is on a fairly long cooldown, but anytime that you have this active, it's just going to beef up your neutron capture even that much more, and it is especially helpful on bosses. Next, we're going to go into Dirty Bomb. Whenever you irradiate an enemy, which you're going to be doing through Demon Core anytime that you just pop your Chrome Accelerator, or if you're using a radiation weapon paired with like Poison Sun, you have a really high irradiation chance, then you're going to create a radiation explosion, which will just do 40% of whatever the damage that you did was. Depending on your weapon, this can be pretty good. It's only 1 point though, so you can take it or leave it, but it will buff up your Chrome Accelerator and help out your boss damage quite a bit. Wasted is kind of cool. I don't really think it's like all that necessary. So up to you if you want to put the point there. I would rather just opt out of that point. For the rest of our points, we have quite a lot of options, to be honest with you, and it is up to preference a little bit. One thing that is extremely strong on Harlowe is this node here, Confirmative Reality. Whenever Harlowe shoots an entangled enemy, she and all allies restore a portion of their cooldown. It's going to be 1.5% flat per second, and this seems to scale off of action skill cooldown rate percentage as well. So if you're fighting a boss, for example, this means that you can just effectively get your action skill back infinitely, which is really good, especially because we're going to be using fast firing weapons anyways. Extremely good on bosses, less good when you are ad clearing, because when you're ad clearing, your Chrome Accelerator is the only way that you're getting entangle, and you're going to kill everything. Like anything that gets hit by your Chrome Accelerator is just dead anyways. So this is particularly good, like I said, if you want to kill bosses. But at this point, we've already spent 26 points. Like, you're around done with the campaign. And in order to get Confirmative Reality, you have to spend an entire 15 points to get down here. But some of these nodes are good anyways, so it's pretty difficult to say at this point, like, what is the optimal way to spend the rest of your points. And like I said, it is fairly up to preference. What I would do personally is I would probably wait until I had an additional 13 points to actually go into this. So I'd be about level 40 or so. I think, level 40 is when you'd actually be able to unlock this. So what I would do in the meantime is just put some points probably in Red Tree to just buff my generic damage. And then once I actually am level 40, I would respec out of those extra points. So what points would I actually go into? I would probably start to max out test subjects. That would probably just feel a little bit good, but if I already had some action skill cooldown through my gear, then I would opt out of this. And like I said before, it is not super impactful. It's just a little bit helpful. I would probably go 5 into practical applications here because that is just pretty good damage wise. And then you could also go into field ready prototype, which effectively just does the same thing. And this will just beef up your neutron capture damage, but it is not going to beef up your actual gun damage, which I think is the only like sore point of this build. Is your actual gun damage will feel a little weak when you don't have neutron capture active. You already feel like you do infinite damage when you have neutron capture active. So if at this point you feel like your gun damage is weak, then buffing your action skill isn't going to help out a lot. It's a little weird, and you really have to get a feel for it, to be honest with you, but that's kind of just how it is. So with the rest of my points here, I'd just max out field ready prototype just to even beef up my neutron capture damage even more. And for my last 3, if I have a very good status effect gun, I would go into Great Red Dot just to increase the status effect damage. And your neutron capture will also apply irradiation to enemies, so then it'll beef up that damage as well if you feel like you need it. Or if I wanted more cooldown, I would then go into test subjects. At this point, I have enough points to actually go into Green Tree here, so I would just do a quick little reset, and then I'd grab 5 points into, in this first row, it kind of doesn't matter. If you want defense, I'd go mains hum. If you have a crit knife or you're using a crit scaling weapon, I would go into momentum. I'd then go into neutron decay, which will just give you a little bit of extra gun damage after you irradiate an enemy, which is pretty good. And then I'd go into confirmative reality, and then we would grab resonance cascade, and then we'd have about 5 points left over, so we'd probably just go somewhere into the red tree, so we could go into practical applications, max that out, or we could max out test subjects and then get like 2 into practical applications. There's a lot of options there, and honestly it doesn't really matter a ton. Some of it is up to preference, but of course I will have the skill point order min-max in the way that I think is the best down below. I just want to give you guys some options. When it comes to gear and weapons, I'd say the weapons are the single most important thing on this character, so let's talk about it. First off, you want to have any gun that is just extremely high fire rate. I'll show you guys a few examples here, but SMGs that are called Buris are extremely high fire rate, and if you happen to get one with an alt fire extra barrel, or any gun with alt fire extra barrel, I believe I have an extra one here, yeah, this one I believe is even technically higher fire rate than this one, but I think it was a little hard to use. But you can see if I pop the extra barrel here, oh, this one is a, I didn't like this one because it has a charge up. You can see it is shooting ridiculously fast and a lot of projectiles, and every one of those projectiles is going to be benefiting from the extra damage from neutron capture. So having one weapon that you can swap to when you pop your chrome accelerator or afterward to highly take advantage of the neutron capture is going to be your best bet. Vladof guns are typically the higher fire rate weapons, and I have really been liking this one because it just feels pretty nice to use. It has decent accuracy, and you can basically just have the underbarrel permanently activated. COV weapons are also pretty good because they have a charge time, so you basically never have to actually reload them. You just swap it after you use your chrome accelerator, shoot it off for like 8 seconds or whatever, and then swap back to any other weapon that you're using. So one of the really important things about this character is how you actually want to play with it, and utilizing other weapons outside of your neutron capture damage window. So let's say there's a bunch of enemies here. I would pop my chrome accelerator. I'll just go over here and give a quick demonstration. So let's say I'm like walking up to a pack, right? The very first thing that I do is just boom, pop my chrome accelerator, try to hit as many guys with it as I can, blow it up, and then for 8 seconds, I'm doing really big damage, right? Boom, 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 big damage for 8 seconds, okay? And now let's say that the buff ran out. So the buff runs out, what do I do in between? These guys are flying, so it's not necessarily the best example, but let's just pretend, you know, there's a bunch of mobs here. Let's say that it's on cooldown. I want to pop any other weapon that I have that has like an underbarrel or an ordnance. The underbarrels by default are on cooldown, and because they're on a cooldown, they do like disproportionately more damage than other weapons would. So you basically just want to cycle between multiple weapons that have some sort of alt fire with the cooldown. Best ones are alt fire shotgun. These are extremely powerful and you'll find them very often. However, these are not going to benefit from the extra radiation and elemental damage bonuses that you're getting. So ideally, the best sort of alt fire for you would be shrapnel cannon on any radiation gun. That would probably be the highest damage. Another one, I don't have one on me. Railgun does decent damage, but most of the time it doesn't feel very good to use. Tasers can do pretty good damage too. But one that I think is probably the best for this character, and it comes on Malawan guns, is I think it's called like beam launcher or beam laser or something, but it basically shoots a beam in like this formation, like a 3-prong, and it does crazy damage. It's like a slow moving projectile, and it just does insane damage. And you basically just want to alternate between those weapons. So again, as a demonstration, let's say I pop my neutron capture, I do damage with my fast firing SMG for a few seconds. Boom, now I swap to like any, you know, underbarrel that I have. So I go shrapnel cannon, boom, and then once that runs out, I go into my shotgun, and then I'd use a taser or whatever. And then something that's also extremely good is using any heavy weapon ordnance. These things do crazy damage, and they are also on a cooldown. So effectively what you're trying to do here is just cycle between things that have really high cooldowns and basically always do disproportionately higher damage than you would just like shooting a normal gun. If you happen to get a heavy weapon ordnance, prioritize ones that are elemental, but if you get one that's radiation, it'll do insane damage. It'll basically just one-shot stuff. You can just alternate between chrome accelerator and then your heavy weapon ordnance. Something that's going to help out tremendously with your chrome accelerator uptime is getting a Repkit with accelerator on it. where using it is going to give you action skill cooldown rate. If you get one of these with 2 charges and 100% increased action skill cooldown rate, this is going to help tremendously. So you can just use your ult here, neutron capture, do big damage for a total of 8 seconds here, and then after the 8 seconds, pop your Repkit, and you can see that the cooldown on it is down all the way to 10 seconds. So now, during those 10 seconds, I can use my heavy weapon, Ordnance, or any other gun that I want to use that has a cooldown, boom, 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 do crazy damage, and then by the time I'm out of this, I can use my neutron capture or my chroma accelerator again, right? That, I think, is the best way to play the character. If you run around just trying to use guns by default, they oftentimes won't feel very good unless you just get really lucky with like a crazy legendary, or you just got a really good gun. It can be a little tedious to alternate between all of these different alt fires, but honestly, it is the best way to take advantage of this character. And for it to actually feel good, I think you kind of need to do this. When you're doing the campaign, I would highly recommend leveling through normal mode difficulty. The real difference between normal mode and hard mode is that enemies in hard mode simply just take 50% less elemental damage unless it is like properly matched to them, which means if you're trying to use a gun that is like Maliwan and radiation and take advantage of a lot of this radiation stuff, it's just gonna do less damage. You can do it. My friend did it. It's fine. It'll still work still, and that's why using the alt barrel tech is extremely good. But if you just want like a very chill experience, I would recommend doing that. Hard mode isn't going to give you like that much better loot or anything, and you would just honestly have a better experience. Then once you're into the end game, you kind of solve this problem because you'll be able to spam your ult so much that you'll permanently be in neutron capture. Therefore, you're not at much of a disadvantage not having the extra elemental damage there. Hopefully all of that makes sense. I could honestly have just left all this information out, and I could just like leave you to your own devices to try to use whatever gun you want, but this was a pain point that I had while leveling, and once I decided, okay, I'm just going to abuse all the alt fires and like rotate cooldowns, I went from feeling kind of miserable using like normal guns if I didn't get lucky with a normal gun to absolutely annihilating the entire game. I think it is very worth it to play this way, and it is just extremely powerful. Outside of, like I mentioned here, when it comes to class mod, I don't really have a good one. Anything that just buffs like radiation damage or straight up damage or has action skill cooldown rate on it would be pretty good. Any like, if you get elementary, that's good. Generically, poison sun is quite a lot of damage. Anything like cooldown related, it's extremely rare, but if you got confirmative reality on a class mod, that would save you from having to path down here. So that would just beef you up a lot. There is a legendary class mod I got when I was playing on my Vex that is +3 into confirmative reality, and I think this will be best in slot in the end game here, not because of anything that's actually on the class mod, just because you get 3 into confirmative reality. So then you can actually put all of those points not in the green tree and go basically full red tree and some stuff in blue tree to just buff up your actual action skill damage, because honestly the points in here aren't like super powerful. So I'd highly recommend looking out for that. Otherwise, anything generic damage is good. Shield, mine is a complete turd. Use whatever is good, high shield value, maybe some like damage reduction related stuff. I recommend farming Splash Zone and getting the Fireworks shield and getting it in radiation if you can. The drop rate isn't very good, low level, but if you got that in radiation, it would just completely carry you, and it is very, very good. For your enhancement, you're not going to get many of these while leveling. I would just recommend getting one that is paired with whatever the best weapon that you have is, that isn't the weapon you're using during neutron capture. Your neutron capture weapon should melt regardless, so try to find one that is just like, if you're using like a Jacob's shotgun with an alt fire that's really good, or like this one is dataless, for example, and very good, maybe I'd want to use a dataless one. I just happened to get this while I was farming, and it just has pretty good stuff on it. 40% gun mag feels good, and if I'm using a Jacob weapon, it's very good. I'm honestly just going to swap this to my other character. But like, just look for radiation damage or SMG damage. Any gun that you're using, just look for something that synergizes well. There's nothing particularly insane there. When you get into the end game, when it comes to the Spec Tree, going into now with caffeine is crazy good because you use your Repkit, and it is just going to restore 25% of your action skill, so this helps you spam your chroma accelerator quite a lot. And then you also get I am a gun, which means 50% of any gun damage increases you get will apply to your action skill damage, so you get a lot of value out of this, basically just giving you a lot of extra damage with your chroma accelerator. After that, Hone Bind is just really good, gives you a chance to crit, and gives you more crit damage, and if you use a knife later on with Penetrator Augment, that makes all of your damage crit. You should get a lot of extra damage here. Next to that, I would probably go for Riddle You This after that, because nothing else is like particularly strong on this character. This would just give you 50% gun damage, which will feel pretty okay. It would just be a 25% buff to your overall damage, I suppose. Or you could just put an enormous amount of points into Daredevil to just reduce the cooldown there. I didn't even have I Am a Gun, but there we go, I unlocked it. In the Zone is fairly decent as well. Another good one would probably be Overkill. I don't know how large the explosion is on this, but if you're landing critical hits and you're scaling skill damage, then that could be quite good. But this is like some endgame conversation related things. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, recommendations, anything, feel free to leave it down in the comments. Hopefully you found the video helpful. If you did, drop a like. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.